They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri, that's Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, however, and whenever you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking time out to spend it with us. Hopefully, we've been a source of entertainment up to this point. You can laugh with us or at us. We're not really too particular about it. Touched on a lot of NFL and the contracts being signed. Derrick Henry, Myles Garrett, Chris Jones. They all got their money. We touched on, we went through our individual top 10 running back list that you can tell us, email us at thebenchwarmerz@yahoo.com and tell us how dumb we are or how smart we are, depending on where you stand. Benchwarmers with a Z, by the way, for marketing purposes. You can follow us along on the iHeartRadio podcasting app. You can follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and pretty much everywhere else podcasts are available. So, coming up in a little bit, we're going to be talking a little bit of Major League Baseball returning. But first, it's the NBA is almost here. We're in the final countdown, and for the first time in a long time, we actually have some good news to talk about. And it's nice to hear that there have been no positive COVID tests inside the NBA bubble. And Jose, first, right off the bat, what is your feeling? How much rejoicing have you done when you noticed there was no COVID test?
I almost dropped to my knees and thanked God right there at the spot, because I have been so worried about what could happen if there's because that would burst the bubble, right? Like if you have this whole thing going on, you have it's all safe, no one's going in, no one's going out. And for there to be no positive tests for a full week, too. That's the other thing that's really important. For a full week, you just can't get better news than this. I'm hoping that it's actually giving me hope that they will be able to finish this season. I don't want to get too far ahead, but it is giving me hope.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a positive, no pun intended. It's a negative, positive, negative, or whatever you want to say it. And so a couple of some news from the bubble. Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers left the NBA bubble for a family emergency, and more notably, Zion Williamson also had to leave the NBA bubble for a family emergency. And this got me thinking. I kind of mentioned this conspiracy theory some time ago, and you gave me a victory lap to take about how the NBA was setting up to feature the Pelicans because of Zion Williamson, and now it's starting to seem like Zion is just going to shoot himself in the foot, and he's going to, not that anybody plans for family emergency, obviously, that of course happens, but it seems like, last year ESPN kind of went all in on Pelicans games, and Zion was out for the majority of them, and it definitely hurt the product and the NBA ratings. Now, there's a chance that Zion might not make it back for that opening day, which, by the way, features the Lakers Clippers, and also the Jazz playing against the Pelicans, and that's not to watch Rudy Gobert. I can promise you that much.
Or Donovan Mitchell, for that matter. Yeah, no, it's. I don't know exactly what the protocol is. I think when he comes back, he has to quarantine for 2 weeks, and the season's starting in 10 days, so I don't know how it's going to be positive. I don't know how he's going to be able to make it and be able to get back in time. I'm just hoping that, whatever the family emergency is, that everything's okay. And obviously family comes first. I don't want to make any presumptions about where he should or shouldn't be.
Sure.
But it is a shame that the first game, because I believe that's the first game.
Yeah.
So it is a shame that the first game back would be missing the biggest name.
Yeah.
No offense to Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert, who are former All-Stars, and Rudy Gobert, I believe, is a former Defensive Player of the Year. This is the Zion game. Everybody wants to see Zion.
You don't want to tune in to watch JJ Redick?
No, this is not Duke from 15 years ago. This is the NBA, and so it's a shame, and I don't actually see any way he gets back. But at the same time, and it's also because I'm not off the top of my head, I don't know where the Pelicans stand in the standings as far as how close they are to missing or making the playoffs.
They're on the outside looking in.
I do know that, but I wasn't
Yeah.
sure how far away they are. It would be devastating for the NBA based on now me understanding that they're trying to get Zion in.
Yeah.
It would be devastating for the NBA for for the Pelicans to not make the playoffs, and with Zion missing 1 of 8 games at minimum, it seems that just gives them an even lesser chance of making the playoffs. So it's not good.
Yeah, and just for stats' sake, the Grizzlies are at the 8th seed at the current standard. They're 32 and 33. The Blazers are in 9th place at 29 and 37. The Pelicans are in 10th place at 28 and 36. So they're 4 games back from the 8th seed right now. So they don't really have a whole lot of wiggle room to play around and lose any games. Never
You
mind.
probably have to go 6-2. You probably have to go
Yeah.
6-2 to realistically make the playoffs.
And hope that the Blazers don't get hot
Yeah.
and just blow them out of the water. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure, especially in the West. And speaking of the West, some other news out of the NBA bubble. Doc Rivers came out and said that Kawhi Leonard has no minutes restrictions. And to me, that's sort of just kind of one of those golf claps I hear back there.
Yeah.
Just kind of like fantastic. Well, you did have 5 months off, Kawhi, so I would hope that you don't need to do any load management. And on a kind of bigger scale, I was thinking about this when I read this news that Doc Rivers said this. Kawhi Leonard, even if he wins, let's say the Clippers win, it'll be his 3rd championship on his 3rd team, and I think that his minute restrictions, his load management is going to cost him. It's going to cost him a legacy. I mean, I feel like his legacy is more about taking time off than winning championships.
Yeah, absolutely. You could nickname him load management. That could be his nickname. I mean, it's just. I remember a year or 2 ago, I was in an argument with someone saying that they were saying that Kawhi Leonard was better than LeBron James, and it's a ridiculous argument. But I entertained it, and I was like, LeBron is a tank. People say he's soft or he flops or whatever. The guy never misses games or rarely misses games.
Yep.
He doesn't miss postseason games. He plays back to back. He's a tank. Kawhi Leonard's not a tank, and I think that is something that's going to go against him. And honestly, that's probably going to hurt his overall longevity. I mean, maybe they're trying to aid it, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, if you're too fragile to play back-to-back basketball games, how good are you? I don't know. It's weird to me. I mean, I'm sure they can make a deep playoff run, and they always say that it only matters what happens in the postseason anyway, but I do think it's a mark against him.
And keep in mind, too, just to further your point, I mean, LeBron James was drafted in 2003. Kawhi Leonard wasn't drafted until 2011.
That's a great point.
I mean, my God, it's just how you can even make that conversation. I mean, I remember hearing analysts, somebody was saying in the playoffs last year, it's so funny how over the top people will go in the moment that, Kawhi Leonard reminds me of Michael Jordan and his low post game and this and that. It's like, dude, come on. Stop! Why do we have to go for the top shelf at every clip? It seems so unnecessary. It's like, he's as good as LeBron James or Michael Jordan. No, he's not. No. Let's maybe aim a little lower. Start a little lower, and then work your way up, and we'll see where it goes. But it's frustrating because.
And for the record, too. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. No, you're right.
No, it's just frustrating because it's endless, praise in the moment, and then that sort of trails off after the adrenaline wears off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people want to say Kawhi Leonard's better than LeBron because of the way he plays defense on LeBron.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, Dennis Rodman used to play great defense against Shaquille O'Neal and Karl Malone. We wouldn't put them in the same discussion, right? I don't think.
Yeah.
Yep. And so just because a guy is effective defensively against another guy on offense doesn't mean that he's better than the other guy. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Beverley covers Steph Curry pretty well, but I'm pretty sure Steph Curry is going to be a top 10 player all time when he's all said and done, and Patrick Beverley is going to fade away into the ether of the NBA with no fanfare whatsoever.
Yes.
But.
Yep.
So with the bubble, Jose, we talked about this a little bit outside of the show, but I want to kind of run down 3 players that come to mind. What 3 players have the most to gain or to lose? in this bubble coming up? Who, if you want to go back, we can trade off. You can do one.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth. So I wanted to pick not necessarily super obvious guys. Not to say, because obviously LeBron James has a lot to lose. James Harden. There's a number of top guys that we could pick out who have a lot to lose. The first guy I picked out was Pascal Siakam, Toronto Raptors. Entering the 2018-19 season, so this last year when they win the championship, he was averaging for his career 5.8 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
This last season, then in the championship year, he brought his scoring up to 16.9 points per game, brought it up to 19 points per game in the playoffs. People could say, well, that's what happens when you have Kawhi Leonard playing with you. That he takes the pressure off of you, allows you to thrive. That would have been a great narrative that I would have bought. But then he backs it up this season, averaging over 23 a game, leading the Toronto Raptors right now looking like the number 2 seed in the East. If he gets this team to the Eastern Conference Finals without Kawhi Leonard in a season where basically everyone kind of wrote, I think I wasn't expecting much from the Raptors this season. I don't know what you were thinking, but I wasn't expecting much from the Raptors, and I think it would have been easy to write them off. If he gets them to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, that could propel him into that top 10, top 15 discussion. And then likewise, if they go into the postseason and they get eliminated in the first round or even in the second round, you're going to look at him and say, you know what? He might be good to be the second or third best player on your team, but we need another star on this team. And so I just think the narrative around how good Pascal Siakam is really dependent on how far the Toronto Raptors go and how much he's able to dominate the ball and dominate scoring. And I'm not sure what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, Siakam. I mean, he I think like a lot of people, he caught my attention in the playoffs last year because, aside from Kawhi Leonard, I mean, you kind of looked around and Pascal Siakam definitely stepped up and looked like, the second best player on that team. And I have to give him credit. I mean, no offense to Fred VanVleet or anything, but, Siakam looks like he has the, all the pieces to be a superstar. And I think you're right. If he can do some damage in this bubble, then he's gonna go a long way into kind of establishing himself as one of the elite players in the NBA. And so my first guy, and you already mentioned him, but I kind of went chalk a little bit with this. And honestly, I mean, it seems sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say cliche, but I mean, it seems sort of obvious. But James Harden is the first person that came to mind immediately. Yeah. LeBron, I feel like LeBron you could say with anything, but LeBron doesn't count to me. But James Harden, for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is that what I've noticed is that James Harden tends to burn himself out in the regular season. And he goes so hard, he plays, so vigorously and so intensely throughout the course of the regular season to get all those monstrous stats that end up being ultimately meaningless come playoff time, that he sort of just kind of runs out of gas. And so with, an extended break, being able to kind of fully recharge and come into what needs to be more of a sprint than a marathon. I mean, James Harden could and should dominate in the bubble because he has just such a finite amount of time to use all of that explosiveness and all that energy. And I think that his window, the Rockets' window was closing fast, and they had the Warriors on the ropes, and barring a hamstring injury from Chris Paul. I mean, they might have, who knows what could have happened. But James Harden was the first person that came to mind. He could, I mean, he might end up being. I think it's more of a loss than a win, because if he wins, it's going to be great. But I think it's even worse if he doesn't.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. James Harden, even including LeBron, whoever you would you could take any player in the NBA. James Harden has the most to gain or lose out of any player in the NBA, in my opinion, in this bubble. If he wins a championship, the entire narrative around him starts to change. Correct. Now he's a championship player. Now he can get it done in the postseason. Because what I've noticed, and maybe you've more astutely pointed out what's actually happening, but what I noticed that happens to him in the playoffs is that teams just play off of him and say, we're going to let you do all this dribbling around that you do, and then shoot an off-balance fadeaway three-pointer. And if you're hot, you're going to make it. and if you're not, you're going to sink your team. And then what also happens is he's driven around like crazy, and the other 4 teammates on the court are just standing there watching, and it turns into a 1-on-5 game. I don't think maybe James Harden's built for maybe the 90s basketball where isolation ball was kind of what everyone did. Now in today's day and age where it's about efficiency and moving the ball and getting the best shots, his game just doesn't fit to me. So yeah, he's definitely a guy that I completely agree with your take on that one.
Yeah, he seems it's James Harden. The thing that bothers me the most, and this is the last thing I'll say about him, but we can move on. But the thing that bothers me the most, especially after watching the Last Dance, the Jordan documentary. I mean, you talk about iso ball, but I mean, for a while, Michael Jordan was playing kind of on his his own style of iso ball. I mean, you think of Allen Iverson was sort of the ultimate iso ball player, but
yep.
both of those guys, whenever they were playing that game, were always headed towards the rim. And it feels like James Harden does a lot of side-to-side kind of lateral, all his goofy step back. He jumps into people to try to get a foul. And it's like half the time it looks like he's not trying to get to the basket so much as he's trying to get fouled so he can get to the free throw line, which is it just becomes exhaustingly infuriating after a while.
Yeah, he's definitely an exhausting player to watch in the postseason and exciting to watch in the regular season. But yeah, it doesn't seem like his game translates very well to the postseason, but we will see.
Yeah.
So for my next pick, I actually kind of picked 2 guys at once because I focused on the Denver Nuggets. I looked at Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, clearly the 2 best players on the team.
Yep. I
think right now they're clearly in a window, early in a championship window, having been the second best team in the conference last season, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure where they are right now, but top 4 in the conference this year. But it seems like they have the Lakers, they have the Clippers, they have the Rockets, and they have Golden State in their way.
Yes.
So you're like, oh, well, how good could the Nuggets really be? And so what I'm looking at it is like, okay, well, what's the difference between the Nuggets and the other 4 teams that I named? The Rockets don't have definite future Hall of Famers on their team. So now you have to, or not the Rockets, the Nuggets don't have definite future Hall of Famers on their team. So now you have to look at the Nuggets and you say, can Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic be the best players on a championship team in the Western Conference? I'm not so sure. Last season, Jokic went from 20.2 points per game in the regular season to 25.1 in the postseason. Murray went from 18.8 in the regular season to 21.3 in the postseason. I think they need to get, I mean, you're going to see a theme with all my lists, but I think they need to get to the Western Conference Finals. Last year, they got to the second round. They lost to the Blazers. I thought they were a better team than the Blazers. But what happened? The Blazers had a better player in Damian Lillard. And is that what's going to keep happening to the Nuggets? Because if that's what's going to keep happening to the Nuggets, they look like a team that needs to make a move to bring a star over there and create the next super team. Because if they can manage to get one of these top 5 guys away from their team, which I don't know how that would work, but if they can manage to get one of these top 5, top 10 players away from their team to be the best player on the Nuggets, then we're looking at the Nuggets as maybe one of the best teams in the game. But I don't know if they need to take that step. I think we need to see one more year from Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic to see if they're good enough where you can build around them, or if you need to add a better piece to that team. And then you also have to make a decision if you're paying Jamal Murray because his contract's going to be coming up soon.
Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of, I think you're right. And I think Jokic, did you see him in the offseason? Jokic, the joke was that he had kind of the ultimate dad bod, where he was 7 feet, like 284 pounds pre-lockdown. Yeah. He posted on social media, it looks like he dropped probably 40 pounds. He looks in shape, and just as a testament to that, the Nuggets team president, Tim Connolly, pointed out, he said, quote, "He sent me a picture, no shirt on. He's got abs. I've never seen him have abs before."
I just want to make a quick correction. Jamal Murray actually, so they've already committed to Jamal Murray. 5 years, $170 million he signed last season. So that even drills it home even more. You've basically paid 2 guys to be your franchise players in a conference that has 4 teams with Hall of Famers on them. So it's just
Yeah.
it's just a tough spot for them. I don't know if they're good enough to kind of get over that next hump, and I'd like to see if they are.
Yeah, and that quote from the team president actually is courtesy of USA Today, by the way, so to give them credit. You actually touched on my next guy, as a matter of fact. It seems like you're on a roll here. I guess we didn't really talk about this beforehand, but Damian Lillard is kind of I went a little bit chalk here, but I think it's for a good reason. Damian Lillard is a spectacular player. And
Absolutely.
I actually remember saying something about that. Maybe I think it was last year where we were texting back and forth about him, and you said no. I think Damian Lillard, because I said I don't think Damian Lillard's that he's not that great, and you said you completely disagree with me, and you were 100% right. And ever since then, I felt very stupid. And after watching him a lot more last season, I was like, oh wow, this guy's really good. And I think maybe because they're so like geographically isolated in
Yep.
Portland that they almost they get forgotten about. And
Yeah.
Damian Lillard, if they could, first of all, if they can battle back from being ninth right now and make the playoffs, I think that they could do some serious damage because that backcourt, they have the ability to step it up and turn on that that highlight show. And Damian Lillard, if he wins, I think will catapult him into the elite upper echelon of NBA players.
Yeah, absolutely. If the Portland Trail, first of all, yeah, if he gets them back into the postseason, and then they actually manage to win the championship, for Damian Lillard skyrockets to instant probably top 5 player in the NBA right now. I don't see that happening, but I do think, honestly, just because I think they're pretty far below 500 at this point. I know they're in the mix to make the playoffs, or to potentially make the playoffs. But if he's able to get them to the postseason and even win one round, because that would mean that they knocked off the Clippers or they knocked off the Lakers. They knocked off one of these top teams or the Rockets. If he can get into the postseason and do that, I think that would be great. Yeah, Damian Lillard is a guy. I think it's going to be kind of a test case for the NBA because I don't know if you know this. In the past, he said he's not leaving his team to join the super team. That he's going to stay in Portland, and they're going to build a championship team around him. And so to me, he's kind of a test case in the sense like, can that even be done anymore? Can you even do that? Build a team organically and win a championship? It seems like it's very difficult to do these days with everyone joining forces left and right. So
I mean, we saw that. The last one that comes to mind that was built from kind of the ground up was the Thunder. With I guess you could say the Warriors. The Warriors,
Golden State
before uh, Kevin Durant got there. But
Mm-hmm.
I think Kevin Durant on the Thunder before that, when it was him, Westbrook, and Harden, I think was might have been the best team that's ever been drafted. Honestly, I mean, that's the amount of talent on that team is just staggering. And I do think that so if you were just as a side note, just thinking about this because I was thinking about this the other day. If you were to take Damian Lillard out of Portland, because no offense to CJ McCollum, but Damian Lillard is the sole bright spot in that a guaranteed game on the line. He's your go-to guy. If you were to take Damian Lillard, if you were to say, okay, Damian is going to pull a Kevin Durant, and he's going to say, you know what, I want to win. I got to win. I want to get out of here. Where could he go where he would have the biggest impact? Like what team would you put him on to make that team just unbeatable?
Well, my first thought, without having really even thought about this, I immediately thought about the 76ers.
Okay.
Just because I know that Ben Simmons is kind of like their poor man's LeBron James, where he's this small forward, point guard type guy. I also think about the Nuggets. Maybe you move Jamal Murray to the shooting guard, or you have Damian Lillard at the shooting guard. They both could play the same position, but those are just thinking right off the top of my head. Like, obviously, if you add him to the Lakers, it would be insane. But that's just that's not fair. Like, you just add, of course, you add Damian Lillard to a team that's got LeBron James on it. Of course, it's going to be great. So just without taking the obvious Lakers, I think, I would say the Nuggets or the 76ers to me would be, they would be dangerous.
See, I think the thing is, and I agree to an extent, about the 76ers, but I feel like Jimmy Butler, when they had him before he went to Miami, was kind of that Damian Lillard type player. I mean, I don't think he's as good as Damian Lillard, but I think he has the same sort of ferocity and tenacity that you see in Damian Lillard that really people, he wants the ball in a big spotlight.
Yep.
Or wanted the ball. I mean, he still does in Miami, but when he was on the Sixers. So I'm not sure it's not the first team that came to mind. And, taking the Lakers out of it, I think that if you put Damian Lillard on the Celtics, I think that's game over. Because
Milwaukee Bucks too. You just maybe think about them. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Yeah, the Bucks. Absolutely, that's true. That's a good
when you went to the Eastern Conference, I was just like, oh my God, Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, if you give the Greek Freak a weapon like that, that might be dangerous too. But I feel like I think Damian would the talent that the Celtics have between Jason Tatum and just Kemba Walker, and stop there. You don't even have to get to Marcus Smart, Gordon Hayward, all the those other guys. I feel like he would just be. It would almost be a Warriors-esque lineup because I mean I was a huge Kemba Walker fan when he was on UConn, and I think he's just been he was an all-star on the Hornets, and now that he's actually on a good team, it's I'm so excited to see what he can do. And Tatum, I think Jason Tatum is going to turn into a superstar. So if you put a bona fide superstar on a team with two ascending potential superstars, it would just be, I think it would be unbelievable. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. But
anyway,
he said he's not going anywhere, so
yeah,
there'll have to be someone join him.
Fantasy sidetrack.
Yeah,
we'll I mean that could change though. If they lose again, he might get frustrated and say, you know what, screw it.
And it's just you mentioned Jason Tatum. He was almost on my list as one of these people who, if they have a great postseason, you're just going to be looking at him possibly as one of the best players in the game. Yep. But I decided to go away from him, and I decided to go to Joel Embiid. Speaking of the 76ers.
Sure.
So right now, looking at the standings, if the seeding holds up as is, which we don't know how it's going to go over the 8 games, but if the seeding holds up as is, the Sixers will end up being the number 6 seed in the Eastern Conference and face Boston in the first round. In that scenario, I would favor Boston, which would mean that the Sixers would be out in the first round. Mm-hmm. You cannot call yourself an NBA superstar if you can't get your team out of deep into the postseason consistently. Last 2 seasons, they lost in the second round. I just feel like we heard all these for like 3 or 4 years. Trust the process.
Yep.
The process is just getting me a second round loss. I can just build the team normally without tanking for 5 years and lose in the second round. So I think they need to reach the conference finals, and not just reach the conference finals. They need to be competitive in the conference finals. Go 6 games, and just to give you a little crystallizing on Joel Embiid. So last season, which was kind of like a breakout year for him, where he was, started to be considered among the NBA elite. He averaged 27.5 points per game. Great year.
Wow.
In the postseason, 20.2.
Wow.
That's a big drop.
Yeah.
That's a big drop. He needs to make a statement this season. And I think that statement needs to be not being eliminated in the second round. I need to see them in the Eastern Conference Finals, or honestly, that whole team may need to be blown up. I was almost going to include Ben Simmons in this as well, but I feel like Joel Embiid is the guy who talks the most trash. So I have to. Yeah,
Embiid definitely has that kind of arrogance about him. I think that Ben Simmons, seems like he's kind of a I don't want to say a humble guy, but I mean comparatively to Embiid, and. Yeah, Philly, I don't know. I mean, that whole process, Nerlens Noel comes to mind. Markelle Fultz comes to mind, and now he's on the Magic. He looks better. Jimmy Butler looks like he improved since he moved to the Heat. So it's hard to say. I mean, the process might not be a very good process. So I would tend to agree with you. I think Joel Embiid's got to step it up.
So if I had to bank, I wouldn't bet on them actually doing well this postseason. So I think there's going to be some changes coming in Philadelphia in the offseason. But
yeah, and they also have I think the worst split record in the league. Like their away games versus their home games, they're almost unbeatable at home, and their away games they're like the worst in the NBA. So it's going to be kind of tough in the bubble. We'll see how they end up doing. But my third guy on this list, and this is our list of players who have the most to gain or lose in the NBA bubble, was Dwight Howard. actually. And Dwight Howard, it's more of a career thing where Dwight Howard came into the league sort of, he went to the Magic, so he automatically got compared to Shaq, and then he went to the Lakers and he got compared to Shaq again, and he's paled in by comparison. He not only in the world of statistics, but also, Dwight Howard doesn't have the personality. Shaq is a gregarious, fun-loving, jovial, happy star. I mean, he just shines everywhere he goes and people are drawn to him. Dwight Howard doesn't have that kind of personality, and I think, those two things kind of really hurt him because the expectations were so high that he just kind of fell off. On the Rockets, he was okay. The Lakers, he ran up against Kobe, and Kobe was, on his case all the time. And it just kind of like he went away for a while. And now that he's back with LeBron on the Lakers, and now he sort of seems like he's cemented himself as a role player, and he seems happy, and he's productive. And I think if you were to tack on a single championship to Dwight Howard, I think he'd be a lock for the Hall of Fame because he does have good career numbers. They're not spectacular, but I think they're good enough if you were to add a ring to that equation. I think he would make it into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. First, with your point about adding a championship to his resume, it would certainly boost him to that level where you start to consider him a Hall of Famer. I mean, even at this point, I think he's a borderline, and I would lean towards in the Hall of Fame. So if you add a championship, that would absolutely make a lock. But I think it's important that he's just not tagging along. I think he's got to make an impact, whether it's on the defensive side of the ball, coming up with some big buckets here and there. I mean, really for him, he's got to be happy about this. You've had 4 months off. You get your body a chance to heal midway through the season. You get to go into the postseason about as fresh as you can ever be at this age. And you don't even have to be the number 1 guy. You don't have to be the number 2 guy. You barely have to be the number 3 guy on the team. All they need him to do is play defense, rebound the ball, and get a few dunks here and there. So, yeah, he definitely has a lot to gain. And on the other side, if he plays poorly, even if the Lakers win and he plays poorly, I think that might be like, okay, well, this is the end of your career. It's time to retire. So.
Yeah, I mean, with the subtraction of Avery Bradley and who else? Rajon Rondo with the injury, and then everybody has to overcome the addition of J.R. Smith, who is the ultimate subtraction by addition player. I think Dwight Howard's role is actually stepped up even a little bit more from just being a role player with all that, those current breaking changes in the Lakers roster. I think he might have to show up, and if he steps up and really becomes that superstar that he can be for just a very brief window, I think it would do just an enormous credit to his career. But we'll see.
Can he be a superstar for 15 minutes a game? That's really what it boils down to.
Earn that Superman tattoo, dude. Go for it. So, all right. Jose, we got to take a break. And coming up next, we're going to kind of do a little drive-by, rapid-fire MLB talk because Major League Baseball is right around the corner, and we are a sports show. Therefore, we should probably cover the sports that are about to be happening. Baseball, I think, is kind of third on our list, which is, you can tell by our show rundown this week. But we're still interested, and we're going to talk some stuff in terms of MLB and all of that. So you can stick around, follow us along, iHeartRadio podcasting app, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, we're everywhere and anywhere. So stick around. We'll be right back on the Benchwarmers.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
And now back to the Benchwarmers podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri, that's Jose Ortiz, and this is still the Benchwarmerz podcast. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Been a pretty good show so far, Jose. Sometimes we come into this and go, how are we going to fill up these 2 hours? And somehow we've managed to just, things kind of go, they kind of broke in our favor, and we've managed to make it this far. So finally, our last segment of the show, we're going to talk some Major League Baseball, and I kind of want to just do sort of a rapid fire. We're going to throw some questions at you and see how you respond, and then maybe I'll respond to your response, and then that's how the show works. So baseball coming back. Number one on your rapid fire list, who are your World Series favorites?
So I don't want to be a homer, but I just look at the Yankees. I'm going to just go to the American League. Yankees, they went to the ALCS last season. They added Garrett Cole. So taking him away from the Astros, the team that beat them in the ALCS. They have a full, healthy lineup with a young team that looks like they're ready to take a next step. I'm all about the Yankees in the American League this year. The one thing that discourages me a little bit from them is that they're going to have to play the American League East and the National League East, and the National League East has the Atlanta Braves, who I think are probably the second best team in the National League, which brings me to my National League pick, the Dodgers.
Okay.
They just seem to be. They have one of the best 1-2 punches in baseball, pitcher with Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw. They just added Mookie Betts to an already ridiculous lineup. They don't play in the strongest division in the world. They don't play in the strongest conference, the strongest league in the world. So I look at the Dodgers as the team to beat in the National League.
Yeah, I would agree with the Yankees. I think the Yankees are the favorites in the American League. In the NL, I kind of. Yeah, I guess I think you're right with the Dodgers, honestly. The Angels were a team that came to mind as far as the AL, just with their sheer talent. I mean, their lineup is – they don't have the world's best pitching, but they do have Mike Trout, who's the best player in the game. We forgot that, they have Shohei Ohtani, by the way, who is, kind of a hitter-pitcher, and he was injured a little bit last year. But, if he plays and he can stay healthy, I mean, he's a dangerous player on that team.
Yep.
Obviously, they added Anthony Rendon, and don't forget Albert Pujols is still there. And while he may not be quite as mobile as he used to be, he can still hit the ball as good as anybody. So that was a little tough. I still think the Yankees are the favorite, but the Angels are a close second. And I have no argument. I agree with everything you said about the Dodgers. So, question number 2: are there any players or teams that the shortened season favors to you?
Well, it was hard. So I don't think there's any one team that I look at and say, oh, well, now you're really going to be favored. I look at a team maybe like the Angels, where they don't have dominant pitching, because that's really, to me, the biggest benefactor. When you have a long 162-game season, when you have an ace who's going to pitch 200-plus innings at under 3 ERA, strike out however many batters. We don't really need that this year. You just need a guy who can give you 50, 60 innings.
Yep.
And so I look at teams that don't really have dominant pitchers. Those are the teams that I look at that will probably have benefit the most. I didn't have one specific team. And as far as players, Aaron Judge is the guy that I looked at the most. The guy can't stay healthy for a full season. So now we'll just shorten the season for you. 60 games. Can you stay healthy for 60 games, please?
I mean, that's fair. I think. As far as I would venture to say that, and I kind of touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but I think that this shortened season favors kind of the worst teams in the league. I mean, the Padres, the Pirates, the Marlins, the Mariners, the Tigers, the Orioles. I'm trying to think. I think that's most of them that come to mind. The Tigers, I don't know if I just said that, but the teams that generally feel like they kind of fall out of favor within the first 2 months of the regular season. And this is, in a shortened kind of sprint type as versus a marathon, which is the ultimate, the baseball season, 162 games is unbearable. So, maybe a team like the Tigers can muster up, the will to win in a very shortened time frame. But
Yeah, no,
aside from that,
I think that's a good call. The New York Mets are another team that comes to mind.
Mets, yeah.
No, I think it's a great call. Teams that you don't have long enough to really be that bad.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like you're not going to go on a 30-game losing streak. There's only 2 months that you're playing, so it's kind of hard for you to. Yeah. That's a good call. Yeah, I like that.
All right, third question. What do you expect from the Houston Astros this season?
So this could be me leaning on karma and my belief in karma. I'm expecting a bad season, and maybe not like where they're at the basement or anything. I'm not looking at that, but a disappointing season in the sense that they've been World Series contenders for the last 3 or 4 years, and I think that they're going to struggle to make the postseason. We already talked about the Angels being better. The Athletics should be good this year. I think the Astros are going to struggle to make the playoffs, and I don't think it's necessarily because they're going to get the pass because there's no fans in the stands to boo them. I just believe in karma, and I just don't think they're going to have a good year. That's all I have.
I think the Astros are going to be very black and blue this year because while they may not get booed, I think they're going to get beamed quite a bit. But we'll see. We'll see if that works out. Question number 4: How can the MLB compete with the NBA and then the start of the NFL season, or can they?
Well, I don't think that they can, but I have thought of a scenario in which if this were to happen, they would have a chance. I think there are only 2 scenarios. Scenario number 1, there's a home run chase. Now we're obviously not going to break Roger Maris's record or Barry Bonds' record of home runs, but maybe if someone can get to 30, 2 players can get to around 30, between 20 and 30 home runs within 60 games, that could add some excitement where there's a nice race, like 30 home runs in 60 games. That's a pretty impressive feat. I don't know if that, like I said, that seems unlikely. But I think the number one thing that could happen that would be unbelievable. If someone could manage to challenge Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak in a 60-game season, and I'm not even saying get to 56 or 57, but maybe get to 40, flirt with it where now you have to tune in every day. Oh, how many hits does fill in the blank this player have? I'm sorry. Not how many hits did they have? Did he get a hit today? Did he get a hit tomorrow? If there's a guy you can follow and get behind, especially with hits, there's not that steroid stigma. If you're just getting hits, you're just getting hits. I think if someone could get the last time we had a player get to 30 was 2016, Freddie Freeman. He had a 30-game hitting streak. If we can get someone to get over 30, I think that would be really big for Major League Baseball. Unlikely, but really big.
Yeah, I think the only way the MLB competes is just with intelligent scheduling. Just don't play games on Sundays, and you can have a better chance. I mean, the NBA. I mean, you get a lot of people. A lot of diehard MLB players or fans aren't necessarily diehard NBA fans. So I feel like that's sort of that's sort of a push. But the NFL just don't play big games on Sundays. You should be fine. So
well, I think with the NBA, the problem is that there's going to be postseason, right? There's only 8 regular season games, so now you're competing with the NBA postseason and the NFL regular season. So it's just a lot to compete with. They had their chance. They blew it.
They did. Correct. Question number 5. Which players, if any, are you most excited to watch this season?
So I've picked 4 players. One of them I already talked about, Aaron Judge. I already said a player who I think a shortened season favors. I'm really interested to see Ronald Acuna Jr. on the Braves, outfielder with legit 40-40 potential. He's basically considered one of the best players in the game already, and this is year 3 for him. Mookie Betts just was traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers, 2 years removed from an MVP season. I'm just interested to see what he does for that lineup with Cody Bellinger and company in there. And then a rookie this year who I've been hearing so much about, Lewis Robert, center fielder for the Chicago White Sox. Looks like the way people are talking about him anyway, it's supposed to be the next big thing in Major League Baseball. I literally had never heard of him up until earlier this year. And then as I've been reading more and more about baseball, they're saying he's the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. And I'm like, how have I never heard of this guy before? But that's the Major League Baseball for you, because you draft a guy, you don't hear from him for 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden he's in the majors because he's been buried in the minor leagues. So Lewis Roberts, center fielder, that I just keep hearing so many superlatives thrown his way. Ken Griffey Jr., just 40, the same type of thing, 40 home run, 40 stolen base potential. I'm just interested to see if he lives up to the hype.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge for sure. And I think the two players I already mentioned that I'm really looking forward to are both on the Angels, between, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, I think are. Yeah, Mike Trout, it pains me because Mike Trout, you hear that he might be the best player since like Ted Williams. No one sees him outside of, Los Angeles. It feels like no one really sees him because Angels games don't make it to primetime very often. But I'm hoping that in a shortened season, not only will they advance a little further than they usually do, which is to say at all, that at least he'll get a little bit more notoriety, because he deserves it. He's the best player in the league, and it's time people were able to see him being the best player in the league.
Can I say something potentially controversial here? I have never been a huge Mike Trout guy. Like, I get that everyone, and I know that I'm wrong. And I accept it. It's like, for years, I was never a Russell Wilson guy, as you know. And then I eventually was like, okay, I'm done. He's amazing.
He's pretty good, yeah.
But, to me, and maybe it's just baseball, and then it's the type of sport that it is. They haven't even sniffed the playoffs, or they barely sniffed the playoffs while he's there. They have to invent stats to show me how good he is with WAR and all these different things. I don't know. The best player since Ted Williams. How about you get a postseason run going first? I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's obviously a great player. I'm just not as sold on him as being this generational, historic level talent that he's been built up to be.
I mean, just for the record, he is a 3-time MVP. He also was Rookie of the Year and an 8-time All-Star.
I get it.
He hit 45 home runs last year. So
no, I get it. He had 45 home runs last year. He's been over 100 RBI 3 times.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing, nothing like amazing, 79 RBI, 72 RBI, 90 RBI. I get it. He scores a lot of runs. He walks a lot. He gets a lot of hits. He's a great player. I take, when people start comparing him to Ted Williams, that's where I'm like, okay, he's a great player. I don't see where he's that good. Where he's an all-time, because Ted Williams to me, or anyone in that discussion, you're talking about top 5, top 10 hitter. Ted Williams probably got top 2 hitter, top 3. So I just don't see Mike Trout in that discussion. But
yeah, I mean, it is hard to compare eras. I mean,
I think Manny Ramirez is better than Mike Trout. You know what I'm saying? I give me Manny Ramirez.
Slow down there. Now you're getting a little crazy.
I'm about to look up Manny Ramirez's numbers right now. Give me Manny Ramirez.
Okay, put Mike Trout on steroids and see what happens. Manny Ramirez failed the drug test 3 times. I mean, come on, that's
fair.
You can't. You can make their argument with Ted. Ted Williams is a good argument, but
although we don't know what Ted Williams was and wasn't doing, of course, but
you can't. He never failed the drug test, and so I think that's.
Yeah.
Ted Williams might be a little premature, but not that much. I mean, well, we can say that for another day. I mean, I think more to your point, it shows the ability or lack thereof, actually, of a singular player in baseball that isn't a pitcher. Their ability to affect a game's outcome. Because I mean, Mike Trout, he's center fielder and he's a great hitter, but he can only go up. He can only bat one at a time. You can't have him up there the entire. Just keep having Mike Trout go up to bat. So
I don't know when. Just last point on this with Manny Ramirez.
The enormity of the pitcher's ability to affect the game versus everyone else.
Absolutely, and my last point, just to
next question. So we have 2 more of these. Speaking of players. What's that? You're breaking up for a second. What's up?
No, I was going to say my last point before I compare him with Manny Ramirez. Manny Ramirez, 9 consecutive seasons with 100 or more RBI. Mm-hmm. I know that he failed the drug test, but I don't know.
He also has three consecutive seasons of drug use. So
yeah, that's fair. But we just went few shows ago, we were kind of minimizing the impact of him taking steroids in the steroid era.
Manny Ramirez. I am not a Manny Ramirez fan. I think he was. It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
We can save that for another show.
Yep.
Question number 6. Moving on. What are some impactful offseason moves that we have forgotten all about in Major League Baseball?
You already mentioned one, Anthony Rendon, 7 years. The numbers that the baseball players are signing is just ridiculous. But so Anthony Rendon, 7 years, $245 million. So finally, Mike Trout has some lineup protection. You talked about Albert Pujols, great player, great all-time player, also a guy who I think is better than Mike Trout, but whatever, fine. But like all-time anyway. Anthony Rendon brings a 300 bat, whole power, run production. It'd be nice to see what Mike Trout can do in a lineup where someone else is actually good, because Albert Pujols hasn't really been the Albert Pujols that we knew of when he was on the Cardinals, when he joined the Angels. Another guy we mentioned also, Garrett Cole, 9 years, $324 million. My goodness. First ever pitcher to sign a $300 million contract. Gives the Yankees a legitimate ace, something they've been missing for about a decade now. Then Mookie Betts and David Price, although Mookie Betts and David Price was traded from the Red Sox to the Dodgers for Alex Verdugo. David Price has subsequently opted out, though, of this season for fear of coronavirus concerns. And then Hyunjin Ryu signed 4-year, $80 million as a pitcher, signed 4-year, $80 million with the Blue Jays. Allows them to maybe compete a little bit more. I think the Blue Jays are kind of a dark horse team. You look at them, they have a young lineup that maybe they'll take a step forward this year, maybe they take a step forward next year. But I think that they're a dangerous team that might be able to flying under the radar a little bit, and that Ryu signing is going to be big for them, I think. And then lastly, Josh Donaldson, 4-year third baseman, 4-year, $92 million with the Twins, bolstering an already dangerous lineup. The Twins were a prolific home run hitting team last season, and the addition of Josh Donaldson, who's got multiple 40 home run campaigns to his career, it's not going to hurt that. So I'm expecting big things from them.
Yeah, I think the number one there is Garrett Cole to the Yankees.
Yeah.
Is going to be the biggest impact. I mean, obviously he's a pitcher, so he's gonna have the most impact on a game. But Mookie Betts, I mean, I'm curious to watch Mookie Betts too. I feel like I kind of feel like leaving the Red Sox might be a mistake.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We'll see how he fares. I mean, he's got money now. I mean, so I guess maybe you could argue that that's not a mistake. But speaking of money, your final question here on the Benchwarmers: does Major League Baseball need a salary cap? And this is on the heels of Alex Rodriguez, pitching his potential ownership of the Mets to Major League Baseball, and I guess his platform is to institute a salary cap, which is sort of it's so perfectly Alex Rodriguez, because he's just kind of a hypocrite in a lot of ways, and it's like, do as I say, not as I do. And so it's like, yeah, I got all the money, so now no one else needs to get all the money. I feel like it's almost a way to keep him as, one of the richest baseball players to ever exist. And it just seems like such a farce. I don't like it. I hate it.
So this is what I'm going to say. If you're a player in Major League Baseball, of course you don't want a salary cap.
Right.
But this is what Alex Rodriguez is talking about. In 1994, the last time there was a strike in baseball, baseball was the top sport in America. Baseball was number one. It wasn't football, wasn't basketball, it was baseball.
Yep.
Fast forward almost 30 years now, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. But and baseball is sliding to number 3. The football and basketball have salary caps. Every single sport should have a salary cap. It makes no sense for any sport to not have a salary cap. Why would you let one team? Why should New York? And I am a Yankees fan, as I said, but why should New York benefit from being in New York,
right?
And Cleveland not have the same benefit? there should be a salary cap across the entire league. If they wanted to do something, because NFL has more of a hard salary cap, basketball has a salary cap where if you go over it, you just have to pay a luxury tax. So maybe that's a nice middle ground for baseball, but they absolutely need a salary cap. That's how you get balance in the league. Now, he also called for revenue sharing, which I'm not sold on revenue sharing because I need to see more evidence that it's actually being spent on player development and not just on team profits, because that's what it seems like is happening in the NFL. It just, we're sharing revenue. The Cowboys, who make way more money than almost any other franchise in NFL, has to share the billions that they're making with, fill in the blanks, the Cleveland Browns or whomever. And the Cleveland Browns, are they actually spending that money on scouting and player development, or are they just pocketing that for profits? So, you definitely need to have a salary cap, though.
I think the salary cap is something that is long overdue to Major League Baseball. I just think that, the message is good, but the messenger is very poor. And Alex Rodriguez is probably the worst player to be a voice for a salary cap. And revenue sharing is fine. I mean, give the Pirates some money, man. Come on, let's step it up. Parity is good for the league. You want to go into every season not knowing who's going to win. You don't want to know that it's too much.
And maybe A-Rod is the actual reason
all right,
why.
So that'll do it for this week of the Benchwarmers. We appreciate all of you guys sticking around and listening to all this. So I'm very excited. We're getting one more week closer to sports. And so follow us along. Once again, iHeartRadio podcasting app, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, you name it, we are there. So for Jose Ortiz, I am Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.